My name is Harold Pennywhistle, diplomatic mediator extraordinaire, and I'm about to tell you how I single-handedly destroyed world peace with my pinky finger. It was supposed to be the most important day of my career. 5 warring factions had finally agreed to meet at the Neutral Zone Conference Centre, a converted Chuck E. Cheese in Newark that still reeked of birthday cake and broken dreams. After 3 years of bloodshed over the great parking spot dispute of 2022, which had started when someone's grandmother double parked at a Walmart and escalated into full-scale warfare involving siege engines made from shopping carts, we were this close to signing a peace treaty. I should mention that getting them all in the same room had required 17 security deposits, 3 exorcisms, Madame Moonbeam's idea, and a legally binding agreement that no one could bring weapons deadlier than pool noodles. The conference room still had sticky floors and the faint smell of pizza grease mixed with industrial disinfectant. The delegates couldn't have been more different. General Maximus Bludgeon, a 7-foot mountain of muscle who considered tactical restraint a form of weakness and indoor voice a sign of surrender. He wore his military dress uniform covered in so many medals that he sounded like a one-man marching band when he walked. His chest was so decorated it created its own gravitational field. The medals included Outstanding Achievement in Shouting, Purple Heart for Stubbed Toe During Battle, and Most Creative Use of a Pool Noodle in Combat. He'd arrived by helicopter, which he'd somehow managed to park in the handicapped spot, causing the first diplomatic incident before we'd even started. Princess Lavinia von Sparklebottom, heir to the Glitter Kingdom and a walking craft store explosion. She'd arrived in a pink limousine shaped like a unicorn that shot actual rainbows from its horn. The EPA was still investigating. Everything she touched became bedazzled within seconds, and I mean everything. The door handle now looked like a disco ball. Her tiara was so sparkly it required its own eclipse glasses to look at directly. She spoke exclusively in rhyming couplets that somehow always managed to include at least 3 words that didn't exist in any known language. She brought her emotional support peacock, Sir Glitters-a-Lot, who was wearing a tiny matching crown and looked deeply embarrassed. Dr. Wilhelmina Overthinksworth, a theoretical physicist who analysed every word through 17 different philosophical frameworks before speaking. She'd arrived precisely 4 hours and 37 minutes early to optimize the probability matrices of successful negotiation outcomes. Her briefcase was actually 7 briefcases, stacked inside each other like Russian dolls, containing 847 backup contingency plans, color-coded by probability of success and indexed alphabetically by potential catastrophic outcomes. She also carried a backup briefcase for the backup plans, and a theoretical briefcase that existed only in quantum superposition until observed. She'd already calculated the room's optimal temperature, 68.4 degrees, humidity, 34.7%, and the precise angle at which everyone should sit to maximize diplomatic harmony, 42 degrees relative to magnetic north. Then Bubba, the Hammer, McGillicuddy, a former professional wrestler turned insurance adjuster who settled every dispute through various forms of competitive physical activity. He'd arrived in a monster truck painted with flames and inspirational quotes like, "Winners never quit, quitters never arm wrestle." His 3-piece suit was custom tailored from what appeared to be canvas tent material and still barely contained his massive frame. He'd already arm wrestled the security guard, who won, the parking meter, draw, and a decorative plant, victory by default when it didn't fight back. He addressed everyone as either champ, sport, tiger, or buckaroo, and had somehow managed to turn his business card into a tiny championship belt. Madame Mystique Moonbeam, a self-proclaimed spiritual advisor who claims to channel the wisdom of ancient parking spirits and communicate with the ghosts of expired parking meters. She wore approximately 14 scarves in colours that didn't occur in nature, smelled like a combination of patchouli, sage, and what I suspected might be French fries, and prefaced every statement with either "The universe whispers to me," "My spirit guides inform me," or "The ancient parking gods demand." She brought her own folding chair covered in crystals that hummed ominously, and a bag full of what she called sacred parking tokens, but looked suspiciously like Chuck E. Cheese game tokens. Her third eye was apparently located on her forehead and covered with a rhinestone that blinked at inappropriate moments. After 6 hours of negotiations, Princess Sparklebottom insisted on bedazzling the treaty documents, which took forever, and also somehow resulted in the conference table developing its own ecosystem of glitter-based life forms. We were finally ready for the ceremonial signing. I'd been practicing my closing remarks for weeks. This was my moment to shine. The day had already been eventful. Dr. Overthinksworth had brought a PowerPoint presentation with 347 slides titled Probabilistic Analysis of Parking-Based Conflict Resolution in Post-Industrial Society. General Bludgeon had gotten his medals tangled in his chair and required assistance from the Newark Fire Department. Bubba had arm-wrestled a vending machine and won, somehow causing it to dispense free snacks for everyone, which only escalated Princess Sparklebottom's sugar high. Madam Moonbeam had performed 3 separate cleansing rituals on the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics, claiming they were possessed by the tortured souls of birthday parties past. Sir Glitterzalot, the emotional support peacock, had also eaten half of Dr. Overthinksworth's backup plans, and was now making concerning glittery deposits around the room. Poets. Overthinksworth had just finished her 47-minute analysis of the treaty's implications for future parking metaphysics. Consider, if you will, the quantum entanglement of parallel parking with the existential dread of expired meters, when General Bludgeon stood up so forcefully that his chair shot backward into the ball pit. "Enough talking," he bellowed, making the leftover arcade machines beep in terror and setting off 3 different car alarms in the parking lot. "Let's sign this blasted thing and get on with it. I have a 4 p.m. appointment to intimidate some pigeons." Princess Sparklebottom gasped so dramatically that her tiara shot sparkles across the room like a glittery geyser, temporarily blinding everyone. Sir Glitterzalot squawked in solidarity and knocked over a decorative plant with his tail feathers. "But General, you simply must wait. The documents need 7 more coats of glitter for proper authenticity. Plus, the cosmic alignment won't be optimal for another 17 minutes and 34 seconds. Without proper sparkle, the treaty might crackle. Without the right shine, peace won't be fine." As she spoke, more glitter somehow appeared from nowhere, coating the ceiling tiles and making the overhead lights look like a low-budget disco. Bubba cracked his knuckles with sounds like gunshots. "Tell you what, Sparkles, arm wrestle you for it. Winner decides when we sign. Best of 9 rounds, sudden death overtime if necessary." He flexed his biceps, causing several buttons on his tent suit to strain dangerously. "The universe whispers to me," Madam Moonbeam interrupted, waving her hands mystically and accidentally knocking over her crystal-covered chair, which began playing what sounded like whale songs. "That Mercury is in microwave, which means the parking spirits are agitated. Also, my left knee is tingling, which means rain, or possibly aliens. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes." "Retrograde!" Dr. Overthinksworth shrieked, leaping up so suddenly that she knocked over all 17 of her colour-coded clipboards. "Mercury is in retrograde, not microwave. This changes everything. According to my calculations, if we sign during Mercury retrograde while Mars is ascending through the parking meter constellation, and considering the current barometric pressure of 29.67 inches of mercury, which is ironically appropriate, there's an 84.7% chance of complete diplomatic catastrophe. We need to recalibrate the entire probability matrix." She frantically began pulling backup calculators from her backup briefcase, each one beeping at a different pitch. That's when it happened. I'd been fidgeting with my pen, nervous about my big moment. A terrible itch attacked my nose. You know that kind of itch, the one that feels like a tiny army of ants has decided to hold a rave in your nostril. Without thinking, I reached up to scratch it. But in my nervousness, combined with the chaos of Dr. Overthinksworth's calculator symphony, Princess Sparklebottom's glitter explosions, and the general mayhem, I somehow managed to extend my middle finger, while the others curled under. At that exact moment, Sir Glitterzalot let out a piercing squawk. The Chuck E. Cheese band played a discordant note, and the crystal chair stopped singing. The room went dead silent. 5 pairs of eyes stared at my hand in horror. One more pair, Sir Glitterzalot, stared at my hand in what I can only describe as peacock judgment. "And thee, and you, and that peacock, Everyone gets challenged. He started swinging his foam sword so enthusiastically that he accidentally knocked over the Chuck E. Cheese birthday cake display, covering himself in 3-week-old frosting. Princess Sparklebottom revived herself from her fainting couch, which was actually just a pile of glittery cushions she'd created, stood on her chair, pointed dramatically, and declared total glitter warfare. I declare a sparkle embargo. No more glitter for anyone until justice is served. Also, I'm commandeering all the birthday cake. Sir Glitters a lot, assume battle position. Your rudeness has made me quite crudeless. Your gesture has caused such great pressure. The peacock, apparently well trained in sparkle warfare, spread his tail feathers and began making aggressive peacock noises while shooting small amounts of glitter from hidden compartments in his crown. Bubba started doing increasingly aggressive stretches, each one more intimidating than the last. All right, pencil pusher, you want to throw hands? Let's settle this like gentlemen. Fun wrestling contest, best of 17. Winner takes all, loser buys lunch. He began shadowboxing with invisible opponents while doing lunges, creating a one-man fitness intimidation display. Dr. Overthinksworth frantically scribbled calculations on 17 different whiteboards that she'd somehow produced from her quantum briefcase. If we consider the socio-political implications of gesture-based warfare, cross-referenced with historical precedent and adjusted for the Chuck E. Cheese atmosphere coefficient, plus the emotional trauma factor of mechanical birthday music. She was writing so fast that her calculations were creating their own wind current, blowing papers around the room. Madame Moonbeam began the most aggressive interpretive dance known to mankind to appease the angry spirits of the parking meters. This mostly involved a lot of spinning, occasional dramatic poses, mystical finger-waggling, and what appeared to be some kind of spiritual battle with invisible parking enforcement officers. Her 14 scarves got increasingly tangled until she looked like a very confused, very mystical burrito. I tried desperately to explain, but every word made things worse. When I said, "Please, let's be reasonable," they heard, "You're all unreasonable." When I suggested we put this behind us, they interpreted it as I'm making rear-end gestures at you. The situation spiraled completely out of control when the Chuck E. Cheese animatronic band suddenly activated, apparently triggered by the chaos. They launched into the most aggressive performance of Happy Birthday ever recorded, with mechanical mice spinning at dangerous speeds, strobe lights flashing like we were at the world's most traumatic rave, and the main Chuck E. Cheese head rotating so fast it was creating its own weather system. But it got worse. The birthday cake frosting that had splattered everywhere when General Bludgeon knocked over the display was apparently the industrial strength kind used for decorations that sit under hot lights for weeks. It had hardened into a slippery, sugar-based floor coating that made walking treacherous. Overthinksworth, still frantically calculating, slipped on a patch of frosting and went sliding across the room like a very academic penguin, her papers flying everywhere and her backup calculators creating a trail of electronic beeping behind her. This caused Princess Sparklebottom to laugh so hard that she accidentally triggered what I can only describe as a glitter bomb, some kind of hidden mechanism in her dress that released approximately 17 pounds of craft glitter into the air, creating a sparkling cloud that made it impossible to see more than 2 feet in any direction. Bubba, blinded by glitter and deafened by mechanical birthday music, began shadowboxing more aggressively, accidentally punching what he thought was an invisible enemy, but was actually the fire alarm button. Madame Moonbeam, still tangled in scarves and now completely covered in glitter, declared that the spirits are having a disco party and began spinning faster, creating a mystical tornado that somehow made everything worse. That's when inspiration struck. If I'd accidentally started this mess with gestures, maybe I could end it the same way. "Everyone stop!" I shouted over the tinny birthday music. "I challenge you all to a gesture duel!" The room fell silent, except for Chuck E. Cheese's mechanical head rotating ominously. "A gesture duel?" General Bludgeon lowered his foam sword suspiciously. "Yes," I continued, making things up as I went. "Ancient diplomatic tradition. We'll settle this with a contest of gestures. Each person performs their most powerful hand signal, and whoever makes the most impressive gesture wins. The winner gets to decide what my original gesture meant. Dr. Overthinksworth's eyes lit up. Fascinating. According to my research, gesture-based conflict resolution dates back to the Mesopotamian thumb wars of 3000 BCE. Princess Sparklebottom clapped excitedly, sending sparkles everywhere. Oh, how divine! A gesture contest so fine! We'll battle with hands across these fair lands. Bubba grinned and cracked his knuckles. Now that sounds like my kind of competition, champ. Madam Moonbeam nodded sagely. The universe whispers that this is acceptable. Also, it's asking if we have any snacks. What followed was the most ridiculous 5 minutes of my professional career. General Bludgeon went first, performing what he called the Salute of Certain Victory, a complex military salute that somehow involved all 10 fingers, both elbows, and a little marching in place. It was actually quite impressive, if you ignored the fact that he kept shouting, "Sir, yes, sir," in his own hands. Princess Sparklebottom followed with the royal wave of magnificent sparkles, which was basically a beauty pageant wave, except she'd somehow made her fingernails shoot actual glitter with each movement. The Chuck E. Cheese mascot head was now completely bedazzled. "Behold my wave, so bright and brave," she declared. Dr. Overthinksworth presented the gesture of calculated probability, a mathematical hand movement that she claimed represented the statistical likelihood of successful diplomatic relations. It looked like she was conducting a very confused orchestra, but she provided detailed commentary throughout. Note how the thumb represents variable x, while the index finger symbolizes Bubba. Performed the handshake of champions, which was just him grabbing his own hand and vigorously shaking it while flexing his biceps. This represents the eternal struggle between man and also man. Yeah! Madam Moonbeam attempted the sacred dance of the parking meter spirits, which involved a lot of mystical finger-waggling, while she hummed what sounded like the theme from Jeopardy. Her scarves were now completely tangled, making her look like a very confused mummy. Finally, it was my turn. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was committed now. I stood up, took a deep breath, and performed what I decided to call the universal gesture of diplomatic reconciliation. It was every gesture I could remember from my diplomatic training, performed simultaneously. I bowed Japanese, gave a thumbs up American, made the peace sign British, did jazz hands Broadway, and somehow managed to incorporate a little wave international. The result was me looking like I was having some kind of elaborate seizure while greeting an invisible crowd. For a moment, nobody said anything. Chuck E. Cheese continued his mechanical birthday celebration in the background. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. Magnificent! General Bludgeon boomed. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I like you, gesture maker. Princess Sparklebottom burst into tears of joy, her mascara creating sparkly streaks down her cheeks. So beautiful, so true, a gesture for me and you. Your dancing hands have healed our lands. Dr. Overthinksworth frantically scribbled notes. Absolutely fascinating. The biomechanical efficiency of combining 17 different cultural gestures. According to my calculations, this has a 99.8% success rate for diplomatic relations. Bubba gave me the biggest bear hug of my life. That was awesome, sport. You just out-gestured all of us. You're the gesture champion. Madame Moonbeam unwrapped herself from her scarves and nodded approvingly. The universe is laughing with joy. Also, it says thank you for the entertainment. With the great gesture duel concluded, we returned to the treaty signing. Everyone was in such a good mood that they barely noticed when Princess Sparklebottom accidentally bedazzled my face while applying the final glitter coat to the documents. General Bludgeon signed with a pen shaped like a tiny sword, adding "Victory through superior hand signals" next to his signature. Princess Sparklebottom signed in glitter ink that spelled out her name in cursive rainbows, adding a little rhyme. With this signature bright, we end our long fight. Overthinksworth signed with 17 different coloured pens, each representing a different aspect of the agreement's probability matrices. Bubba signed by arm wrestling the pen until it submitted to writing his name. Madam Moonbeam consulted the parking spirits one final time before signing, then added a little drawing of what she claimed was a blessed parking meter. Just as I was about to deliver my prepared closing remarks, disaster struck in the most ridiculous way possible. The Chuck E. Cheese animatronic band, which had been malfunctioning all day, suddenly exploded into the most aggressive performance of Happy Birthday ever recorded. Mechanical mice began spinning at dangerous speeds, lights flashed like a disco nightmare, and the main Chuck E. Cheese head started rotating so fast it became a blur. The noise was incredible. We couldn't hear ourselves think, let alone speak. That's when the real disaster happened. In the chaos, Princess Sparklebottom knocked over her industrial-sized container of craft glitter. The entire contents went airborne, creating a sparkling tornado that coated everything and everyone in the room. General Bludgeon, blinded by glitter and deafened by mechanical birthday music, began swinging his foam sword wildly, accidentally hitting the building's fire alarm. The sprinkler system activated. Water plus glitter equals the slipperiest floor known to mankind. Dr. Overthinksworth, trying to save her 847 backup plans, slipped and slid across the room like a very panicked penguin, crashing into Madam Moonbeam, who went down in a tangle of wet scarves and mystical confusion. Bubba tried to help, but slipped himself, creating a human bowling ball effect that knocked everyone over like glittery, water-soaked pins. I tried to grab the signed treaty before it got soaked, but the combination of water, glitter, and mechanical birthday music had created some kind of diplomatic Bermuda Triangle. I slipped, slid, spun around twice, and landed face first in the Chuck E. Cheese ball pit. Here's the thing about disasters. Sometimes they're exactly what you need, especially when they involve this much glitter and mechanical birthday music. As we all sat in the ball pit, which had become the only dry place left after the sprinklers soaked everything else, covered in glitter, frosting, water, and the dreams of 1,000 failed birthday parties, listening to the dying mechanical gasps of Chuck E. Cheese's revenge, something magical happened. We started laughing. It began with Madam Moonbeam, who was still somehow tangled in her scarves despite being completely soaked, declaring that the universe has a sense of humour after all, and apparently it's really into slapstick comedy. She was picking glitter out of her third eye rhinestone, which was now blinking Morse code. Then Princess Sparklebottom started giggling at how ridiculous we all looked. 5 supposedly dignified adults sitting in a ball pit like oversized toddlers, which made her rhyme. We look quite absurd, covered in curd. But isn't it heard? Laughter's the best diplomatic word. Our treaty went splat, but look where we're at. Friendship's much better than this and that. So glitters a lot, now completely rainbow-coloured from all the craft supplies, seemed to approve and did a little peacock dance that somehow made everything even more ridiculous. Dr. Overthinksworth calculated that the probability of this exact sequence of events was approximately 1 in 847 trillion, which she found statistically hilarious and mathematically improbable to the point of being cosmically absurd. She was wringing glitter water out of her backup plans, which had somehow formed their own small ecosystem in the ball pit. Bubba declared it the best damn treaty signing ever and challenged Chuck E. Cheese's still rotating mechanical head to an arm wrestling contest. When it didn't respond, he declared victory by default and flexed triumphantly, causing his soaked tent suit to make unfortunate squelching noises. Even General Bludgeon was chuckling, somehow managing to sound dignified despite being covered in frosting, glitter, and all pit residue. "Well," he boomed, "at least no one can say diplomacy is boring. This is the most action I've seen since the Great Pigeon Siege of 23. The treaty was completely destroyed. A soggy, glittery mess that was illegible, probably radioactive from all the craft supplies, and had somehow developed sentience. It was making small whimpering noises from under a pile of wet birthday cake. But somehow, we'd achieved something better than a signed document. We'd achieved actual friendship, forged in the fires of mutual humiliation and industrial-strength birthday frosting. As we helped each other out of the ball pit, which took approximately 47 minutes due to the glitter-induced slipperiness, we realised that we'd actually solved the great parking spot dispute, without any official paperwork. "You know what?" said General Bludgeon, wringing glitter water from his medals. "That parking spot isn't worth all this trouble. Let's just turn it into a memorial for diplomatic disasters." Princess Sparklebottom clapped, sending a final shower of glitter across the devastated conference room. "A memorial so bright it'll shine day and night. A monument to our fight now ended in delight." Dr. Overthinksworth was already calculating. According to my projections, a memorial would have a 99.7% success rate for preventing future parking-related international incidents, assuming we include adequate warning signs and perhaps a small gift shop. Bubba flexed what remained of his suit. "I'll arm wrestle anyone who tries to park there illegally." Madame Moonbeam nodded sagely, finally extricating herself from her scarf cocoon. The parking spirits approve. They're also asking if we can add a small fountain. Apparently, they're very thirsty. And that's how the great parking spot dispute ended. Not with a treaty, but with a group hug in a ball pit while covered in enough craft supplies to supply a small elementary school for a year. 6 months later, the 5 factions of the great parking spot dispute had not only made peace, but had gone into business together. They opened Gestures, the world's most ridiculous restaurant, where all orders had to be placed using interpretive hand signals and every meal came with a free glitter shower. General Bludgeon became the head of security, greeting customers with enthusiastic foam sword battles. Princess Sparklebottom designed the decor, which could be seen from space due to the concentrated sparkle density. Overthinksworth created the menu, which included detailed probability analyses of each dish's likelihood of causing customer satisfaction. Bubba settled all disputes between customers with arm wrestling contests and called everyone champ. Madame Moonbeam provided mystical dining advice and claimed the restaurant was built on an ancient burial ground for shopping carts. As for me, I became the world's first gesture diplomat, traveling the globe and solving international incidents through the power of ridiculous hand movements. And you know what? It actually works. Because sometimes the best way to make peace is to make everyone laugh so hard at how absurd the whole situation is that they forget why they were fighting in the first place. The moral of the story? When in doubt, jazz hands. Always jazz hands. The Chucky. Cheese in Newark still has glitter in places glitter should never be. They've declared it a historical landmark and charge admission to see the site of the Great Gesture Catastrophe. The animatronic band was never quite the same, but now they only play funeral dirges, which somehow seems more appropriate.